Okay, grade 8. Congratulations for actually checking in on your homework on the first weekend of school. Shows a lot of gumption. Like and subscribe the video to make sure I know that you actually watched it. And here are all the answers to your homework questions. The first question says 1/5 plus 1/4. Now in grade 7 you learned that when you are looking to add fractions, you're looking for the first multiple the two share. So if I look at the multiples of 5 and I look at the multiples of 4, the first one they share is 20. What we call that is the lowest common multiple they have, which is 20. So therefore, what we want to do is we want to use that as denominators for two equivalent fractions that share the same denominator. Because in order for us to add fractions, they have to have the same denominator. So once we have that, we're really looking to create an equivalent fraction. So 1/5 is equal to how many 20ths? And if we think about that, I multiply that by 4, I'd multiply this by 4 to create equivalency. That's 4/20ths is equivalent to 1/5. Over here I can multiply that by 5 and this by 5 to create that same equivalent fraction, which would be 5/20ths. And once you have a common denominator, you simply add your numerators and keep your denominator to give you the final answer of 9/20ths. The second question says 2/3 plus a half. Again, we're going to find that common denominator. In this case, it's going to be 6. That'll be 4/6 because I multiply this by 2 to get 6 and multiply this by 2 to get 4. So 4/6 plus 3/6 would be 7/6, which is correct. However, that is an improper fraction. 7/6 is the same fraction as 1 and 1/6 because if we think about 7/6, that's really 6/6, and an additional 6 would be 7/6, and this is really the same as 1 and 1/6. Question 3, it says 3/5 take away 1/10. Again, same process except subtraction. Find your common denominator. The first multiple both 5 and 10 share is 10. 3/5 is equal to 6/10. Once you have them as equivalent fractions, you can simply subtract the numerators and keep your denominator. The answer is 5/10, which in lowest terms, don't forget, is 1/2. Question 4, it says 1 1/2 plus 2/5. Now the easiest thing to do, there's two ways to do it. You could just think of this as being 1 plus a half plus 2/5, and that will work because you'll have whatever that's going to be. But I always like just taking any mixed fraction and changing it to improper. So for this one, I want to do 3/2 plus 2/5 instead of 1 1/2. 3/2 is the same thing. Find my common denominator. The equivalent fraction to that will be 15/10. The equivalent fraction to this will be 4/10. When you add the numerators, you get 19/10, which is equivalent to 1 and 9/10. Question 5 says 2 1/3 plus 1 1/2. Now again, you could think of it as being 2 plus 1 plus a third plus a half, which is really easy because this will be 3, and this will be 2/6 plus 3/6, which is 5/6. So your answer will be 3 5/6. However, I like to just do it always with improper fractions. So if I did that, this would be 7/3 plus 3/2, same idea. Common denominator is 6. That's 14/6 plus 9/6, which is 23/6. Okay, and then how many 6s are there in 23? There are only 3. You can't get 4 of them. That would be 24. So 3 6s, there's 18, which means you have 5 left over. And your answer is still 3 5/6. Question 6, it says 1/4 plus 5 1/2. So again, you could do the 1/4 plus 1/2 plus 5. This is an acceptable way. Common denominator is 4, so 1/4 plus 2/4 is 3/4. Add it on to your 5, you get 5 3/4. Or you do it the way I like. Simply change the mixed fraction to improper. Follow the same procedure by making it into an equivalent fraction. And you would have 23/4. Right? Oh, I think I made a mistake. Oh no, that's right, 23/4, which is 5 and 3/4. Question 7. 3½ take away 1/10 is the same thing as 7/2 take away 1/10, which is the same thing as 35/10, because I'm going to change this to an equivalent fraction by multiplying by 5. Take away 1/10, which would be 34/10, which will be 3, that's 30/10, and 4/10, which is acceptable as an answer, but in lowest terms, 3 2/5. The second last question is 2 3/5 take away 4/5. So again, same process works here. Change these to improper. Once you have them in proper, 13/5 take away 4/5 is 9/5. That's your answer, or 1 4/5. And your very last question, 4 5/8 take away 2 9/10. What we're going to do here is we're going to change this to 32 37/8. This is a hard question because your numerator is fairly big. Take away 29/10. Ooh, it's going to be really big, isn't it? Now, what multiple does 8 and 10 share? The first one they share, if we look at 8 and 10, is going to be, and I'll just do it real quick. The first multiple they share is 40. Now, you can use 80. That's not wrong. Just makes your numbers really big, but 40 will work. So I'm going to use that as my common denominator. I multiply this by 5, and I multiply this by 5. 30 times 5 is 150. 3 times 5 is 35, so that's 185. Multiply this by 4, multiply this by 4. That's 80 plus 32, or 36. 80 and 36 is 116. So then I'm just going to keep my denominator and subtract my numerators. Big numbers here, but that's okay. I can use a calculator. That's going to be 185 take away 116 is 60, 70, 60, 69 40ths. 69, 79, 85, yep. Which is 1 29 40ths as your final answer. Thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully this didn't take too much of your time. If it did, don't worry about it. And we'll see you on Monday.